Hello, everybody. I'd just like to say hi and happy Lunar New Year. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for taking the time to be here on this last day of our Building Inclusive Communities events. We're here today to talk about belonging. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Beck, and I'm the Settlement and Integration Worker at the Whistler and Pemberton Welcome Centres and the Whistler Multicultural Society. I'll also introduce my co-facilitator today, Marissa. Marissa is the outreach worker at the Squamish Welcome Centre and Settlement Services. Before we get started, though, I'd like to ask Tanina here today to start the event off in a good way and do the welcoming. Tanina's from the Lilwat Nation, and she's also a business owner. Thanks, Tanina.
Enchash nanaktushin kukushin ulkan statim kan uchumil Shemet Shkwachi Chatinina Williams. I wanted to start us off by welcoming everybody to the land of if you're in Whistler and Pemberton and you're in the land of the Lilwat people, and to recognize people that are living in Squamish and also the peoples of the Sunshine Coast. I'm so happy that I could be part of this today and to be able to support you on your path that you're on. I want to sing this song to you. It's the berry picking song, and it's one of my favorite Lilwat songs. It has lots of different meanings for me, but one of the things that it really means, what really brings to my heart, is that it's about, let's go pick berries at Owl Mountain, but it's like for fun, right? And everybody gets excited. Yeah, let's go do that. And it's the fun of working together. A lot of times in our life, we know what it looks like and feels like to work at a job that we don't really enjoy going to. And so, and then hopefully eventually we find our place, right? But that's the same in any kind of work that we do, or any kind of thing that we're going to adventure in. And so, let's go pick berries at Owl Mountain. Let's have fun. We squee mashkalula nklakusha mechel za enaha eyo enaha. We squee mashkalula nklakusha mechel za enaha eyo enaha. We squee meshkalula and klakusham kuchalza enaha eyo enaha. We squee meshkalula and klakusham kuchalza enaha eyo enaha. I also want to share this other song just because it's really in my heart today. It's the groundhog song, and we know that in a few days, the groundhog's going to come out and decide what kind of, if we're ready for spring or not, right? And the kids, of course, at schools are really excited about it. But I was looking through my Facebook feed, and I love animals, so I get a lot of these little videos of different animal stories. And this story was perfect timing because this lady is driving on the road and she sees this fuzzy thing in the middle of the road, and she's like, oh no, it's a little fuzzy animal of some kind, right? So she pulls over and gets it to come off the road, and then she couldn't get it to stop following her. So she's like, no, you stay on the side of the road where it's safe. And she tried to go to her car and it would follow her. And she kept trying to get it to stay off the road, and and it's obviously a baby furry animal, and she doesn't know what it is. So she phones her husband. She says, I found this baby animal. I don't know what it is. I'm bringing it home, because it keeps following me. And so she brings it home, and they call, who they need to call for this wild animal. And they drop it off there. And, her husband's just like, we don't need this animal, and so, but 3 days go by, and she decides, well, I'm going to phone and see what happened to this animal. And so she phones, and the lady says, this animal just has taken a really bad turn. It's not doing well. And I think you should come and get it. I think it would be happier with you. But I know your husband's not going to be happy about that. And she's like, no, we'll go get it. And they go and pick it up, and it becomes healthy again because it's happy, right? And it was a groundhog. And this groundhog decided, it was a little baby that probably lost its mother, and was looking for another mother. And so it decided, you're my person, you're my people. And then it decided that, the cat and dog were its people, and so I'm going to sing the groundhog song and think about what are these little animals doing right now? How are they surviving through the winter, right? Hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na, hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na, hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na, hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na, hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na, hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na, hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na, hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na, hana ha heyo ho, hana ha heyo ne na. That's one of my favorite songs, because in our people, we believe we can transform into these animals when we're dancing, right? And my favorite is to watch the elders, because they really do. They transform into when they're children, and you see our elders dancing, and they got their little paws out, and it just lifts my heart. So that song really lifts my heart. Just to let you know, I have a candle burning. We're not together in this space, but we are energy beings, and this candle will light our path tonight, and I'll keep it burning throughout the whole time. And I just want to, we also have another song. It's called the Dream Song. And this song is where we cast our prayers over our loved ones and people who need healing right now. And that's what I want to think about right now, as our world is in the state it's in, that we spend, that when we think about good things or good thoughts, that we just cast them over people, over the world, and for the people that really need it right now. So thank you so much. Kukstum.
Thank you, Tanina. Really appreciate that, and I really enjoyed those songs that you shared. I'd also like to introduce another special guest we have tonight, Andy Johnson. Andy is a cultural ambassador for the Seychelles people and a language teacher. Please, Andy, over to you.
All gnomes, thank you. Thanking you for inviting me to be part of this event here, this Zoom gathering here tonight. E te quail, te ukmasiaya, quae mention squish, ala chat leche, ala tonaist. I said, good evening, everyone. My ancestor name is Kwa'emen from here, the Seashot people. Thanking you all for inviting me here tonight. I would like to share the gratitude song. This gratitude song is giving thanks to the wonderful people that put on this Zoom event here and to all the people that are gathering to learn more, I guess. Thanking you very much, the Tanina Williams, for the beautiful songs that you shared. That one song sounded like the I forgot that gentleman's name. I think he's from your area that shared that song. Almost sounds like that, the first one. I forgot his name, but it's a jamming song. So here is giving thanks. All gnomes, I did, as it was mentioned, I'm a language teacher for the Seashot people. Also cultural ambassador. I get to do wonderful things like this, do openings and welcomings, meeting people from all over the world. And yeah, thanking you very much for having me here tonight. Fortunately, I do have a Zoom language class in about 10 minutes, but it was, I just got to share with you that one of our dear friends from the Squamish people, you've seen I was doing this in the end. And that's a form of giving thanks or welcoming, thanking. My dear friend from the Squamish people, he does a lot of welcomings and openings. I just want to share what he was saying. Like he says, the Northern people do this when they're thanking. We as Coast Salish people do it this way, thanking. And he says, some people go like this, and that's just telling what a big salmon you got. That's his little joke. Anyway, thanking you very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you for that beautiful song and lovely welcome. And thanks again to Nina for those beautiful songs as well. I'd like to respectfully and gratefully acknowledge that I'm joining this event from the shared and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation and the Lil'wat Nation in Whistler. And this event is also being hosted on the traditional and unceded territory of the Shoshone Nation. This event is brought to you today by the Whistler Multicultural Society in partnership with the Whistler, Pemberton, and Squamish Welcome Centres and Sunshine Coast Welcoming Communities. Our thanks to Canadian Heritage and the Resort Municipality of Whistler for making this event possible. So to get started, I'll just do a really quick word on navigating Zoom. If I can ask everyone to stay on mute unless you're speaking. And please, anyone in the audience, you can use the chat at the bottom of the screen to submit any questions you have for the panel. There will be an opportunity later for us to ask those questions and talk about them. As you will have seen, this event is also being streamed on Facebook Live and will be recorded. If you don't want to be part of that recording, that's fine, just turn your camera off. And a quick note about some agreements and expectations we've got to participate in this community discussion today. This whole discussion is all about encouraging an open dialogue and building more inclusive communities across the Sea to Sky and Sunshine Coast region. And for that to happen, this needs to be a safe place where everyone feels respected. We ask everyone here today to respect each other's views, opinions, experiences, and time. We don't have to agree, but we do need to respect each other. As moderators, Marissa and I will do our best to manage this. But let's get started with a quick warm-up exercise. We'd like to invite everyone in the audience to share in the chat box what community they live in and whether they feel a sense of belonging to that community. And while you're doing that, I'll invite Marissa to talk a little bit about the agenda today.
Thank you so much, Beck. Hi, everyone. The agenda for today, we have 5 panel members for our panel discussions today, 5 women, and they will have some time to answer 2 prepared questions. And also the audience can ask questions to the panel members during the event. So for that, please use the chat box. And also, if there is time at the end, you will have the opportunity to speak and ask questions or share your perspectives or experiences with us if you want. Why we are talking about belonging today? A sense of belonging is important for our quality of life, our physical health, and our social and emotional well-being. It's a feeling that we matter to one another and to the community. People with strong ties to the community have lower rates of diseases and death. Being socially disconnected is stressful, and our physical response to stress can be a kind of accelerated aging. A strong sense of belonging among community members is also important for the well-being of the community itself, its social cohesion as prosperity. And in order to know more about belonging, I have a better understand what belonging means. We interviewed some immigrants from our communities, immigrants living in the Sea to Sky and Sunshine Coast. We asked them the same question that we are going to talk about it today. Let's see what they said.
When you move to other country, You leave your family, your culture, your friends. It's not easy, and immigrants they move because different reasons. Sometimes because of love, or because they want to because job to work, and other times because in their country they are not feeling safe.
So that for me, belongingness is a word that relates to being included.
Listening and pay attention. That we need to do to the immigrant who's coming from other country to Canada. We need to encouraging them to join with the social group in where they live right now.
We should listen to all the proverb. Walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
More trust, respect. That's make us to. With the trust, we can lean each other.
Giving folks opportunities to feel as though they belong, and they have something to offer the community. Yeah. If you feel a part of a community, then you're going to want to participate and contribute to that community, and that builds overall healthiness of the community. I think also, letting people know that, they can contribute. They have the ability to contribute in many different ways.
Those activities, like I've been in Canada and like living on my own for like 2015 since I was like 18, and I've realized that activities really create the bond. Like you can try to be friends with somebody, but if you guys have like opposite things you do, it's gonna be really, really hard, especially planning to meet, planning to see each other. I'm all about activities. Like if I'm going to a gym and you never go to a gym, we'll barely ever see each other. You know what I mean? So I feel like having activities that kind of like people share and do together is kind of bring them together.
But if your employees feel belonged, supported, and comfortable in this community, then they will stay, and then that will make less turnover for the establishments here. So maybe more people will then stay because they are happy living here.
I think the big thing would be promoting more healthy activities. One thing I would like to bring up, what I've noticed, is like we have a lack of like grocery stores and gyms. We have more bars and hotels than gyms. So like we promote more like the spend, do, then actually recuperate. Because as immigrants who are working here, you realize that the way the system is kind of set up, you're not meant to be here long term unless you kind of step out of it, right? Because they want you to go to work, they want you to go drinking every night, you know what I mean? Then living at staff and not worrying about you growing as a person, as an individual.
For example, if you see that your neighbor is from other country, go there, say hello, introduce yourself, and ask if they need something. Because most of us, we came here without family or friends, and at the beginning we are alone, and it's hard. After being here for 6 years, I know what are the challenges. So I know that a new immigrant it needs some help at the beginning.
I hope you all enjoy this video. Thanks, a big thank to all the immigrants that were part of these interviews. I would like to move forward with by introducing our panel members for today. Our first panel member is Jin Si Ho. She's the author of Home is Here. She was born in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and is now based in Squamish. The phenomenon of belonging is something that she has questioned for most of her life. And she even studied how we navigate and express a sense of belonging at Quest University. Thank you, Jinsi, for being here. Our second panel members is Jill Patrick. Jill, maybe I need some help to pronounce this. Sorry about that. Jill is a Chinese Stahamit writer from the Nquatqua First Nation. She works with Sarah Zilin, a Whistler charity that supports vulnerable youth. Sorry, Jill, I probably didn't pronounce properly. Karen Clark is our third panel member. Karen joins our panel with a long experience working in the non-profit sector and helping build communities in the Sea to Sky corridor. She has worked at the Women's Center in Community Development through Vancouver Coastal Health at the Sea to Sky Community Services, and she's currently the Executive Director of Squamish Community Foundation. Thanks, Karen. Mickey McCartney is a Regional Director of Kalahi, the Sunshine Coast Campus, Capilano University. She grew up in Seychelles. Mickey has deep roots on the Sunshine Coast. After many years of working and living on the coast, returning as a part of her work for Capilano University and passion for her community. She works with other groups to address issues and challenges affecting the local community's well-being. Thank you, Mickey. And our last panel member, Tanina Williams, is from the Leeward Nation, and she is a business owner. Her business, Our Wilk, brings Indigenous ways of knowing and being to the classroom and the boardroom. Through workshops built around sharing circles and handcraft and storytelling, Ama Wilk brings opportunities to create awareness, understanding, respect, and togetherness between Indigenous and non-Indigenous cultures. Thank you, all of you, for being here today. And let's start talking. Let's start with the first question.
Okay, first question. What should we be doing in our communities to ensure a sense of belonging for all of our community members, including those from diverse backgrounds? Perhaps Yinzi, would you like to go first?
Sure. So as Marissa briefly mentioned, I did study the phenomena of belonging in my undergrad. Specifically, I focused in the fields of human geography, cultural anthropology, and literary analysis. And the question that I perused was, do I belong? And the thing that struck me over and over throughout both my undergrad research as well as in the process of writing my memoir on belonging is how the very first step to understanding what you can do to foster a sense of belonging is understanding that belonging is inherently flexible and changeable and influenced both by yourself but also your surroundings and the people around you. And we are beginning to undermine the notion of belonging as being nation-based. So a lot of belonging up until very recently has been based on your place of birth, because it's very easy to assume that where you are born is where you have the strongest sense of place. But with the increase in global migration, as well as just the understanding that you can be connected to places in so many more ways than just where you were born, we are beginning to challenge and complexify the definition of belonging. And so naturally, the process of creating a sense of belonging becomes more complicated as well. Something that I think really helped me in my process of feeling like I belonged here in Squamish, which Canada at large is a country where of my entire extended family, I am the only person here. And I feel that especially today on Lunar New Year, when my family in Malaysia is celebrating all together. But the thing that helped me recognize that I belong in Malaysia as much as I belong here, and that both of those belongings can exist simultaneously, is the process of writing and reclaiming my own narrative and making this alternative sort of abstract space in which all aspects of my identity, both the fact that I'm an Asian body but grew up with a Western education, isn't a thing that conflicts, but rather a thing that can exist all at once in the same space and is accepted. And I think that's as far as I have for an answer to that question.
Thank you, Yinzi, for that insight. Jill, would you like to go next?
I would love to. This is awesome. I'm just enjoying hanging out with all these incredible women tonight. But so for me, and in the work that I do with Zero Ceiling, so we work really hard to help young people, youth aged 13 to 25 and up, to overcome barriers, both individual and systemic. We help them break those down to what essentially is belonging and health and opportunity and the ability to thrive. And for us, where we really start with in bringing these young people into our community and helping them to create a sense of belonging, is to see them as individuals. We start with unconditional love for every person. Everybody has an inherent worthiness of being here, and then the next step we try to do is that we actually create space for them. So we have both the individual who would like to belong, but then also the community and the systems that need to create that space in order for them to belong. And that encompasses many things. Like in the video we saw, it's welcoming, it's activities, it's being curious, it's asking questions, but it's also having places to live that are affordable. It is also having signage and, people, a diverse and representative group of people to welcome you here. One of, the young men that we had in our program, he's graduated now, but he once told me, he worked on the mountain, and he once told me that he would look at the sign for Whistler Kids, in which he didn't see himself represented. He was a young Black man. And it's cartoons of some very happy, non-kids of color enjoying snow school, and how he would see that. And like every time it would just be a little stab in his heart. So for him, it was being able to see himself and being able to bring his whole self to the thing that he loved. So for me, it definitely is two halves. It's both the person who needs to, who wants to belong, they need to understand their worth. They need to, like we saw in the video, go out and engage with the community, but they also need to be welcomed as well. For example, another example is my dad was Chinese, so gong hei fat choi to all who celebrate. And my mom is from the Nquatqua Nation, which is just north of here on the southern tip of Anderson Lake. And even though, like, this is my land, this is where I grew up, it's where my body was born and my bones will be buried, I often don't feel welcome here. And that is partly because, of circumstance and environment and upbringing and worldview and all this kind of stuff. But also I think it's also culture, and it's also like the participant that I was talking about, like seeing myself represented. And I feel like there's no place here unless I'm in buckskin and cedar at the SLCC, where, where do I belong in Whistler? So yeah, I'll let somebody else talk right now, but yeah, really interested to hear what everybody has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I see what you mean about seeing yourself. I remember growing up as a kid, and watching cartoons and Disney movies and things like that. And physically, I connected more with the evil characters rather than the good ones. Karen, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Lindsay and Jill. That was fantastic. And I echo what both of them would say. I also wanted to say that I'm sharing my understanding and sense of belonging, but it's limited to my middle-aged female Caucasian views. And I also wanted to say that I'm really humbled to be asked on this panel and also to be on a panel with these fantastic women. So that is a real honor. So I thank you for that. But I also wanted to say that what I'm going to say is informed by my travels and working overseas in different cultures. I spent 3.5 years working in West Africa at one point, and also by my nonprofit work over the years and what I've been doing that for the last 22 years. So that's all going to inform what I'm going to say here. But so I think, you know, Jill and Yinzi definitely referred to space and place, and making those accessible and welcoming for all ages, cultures, abilities, genders, everything is just so important. And I do slowly think there's becoming an awareness. Like I think that we are starting to see more diversity, and the more panels like this that we have, and the more it's out there, the more we're going to see diversity in those ski posters and in those movies. And it's definitely a work in progress. But I do see some change for sure. And I guess in talking about spaces, I'm reminded of these Mexican zócalos, and I am probably saying that word wrong. But they're central places that all Mexican communities have, and I'm sure that's the same in many cultures around the world. And they don't have to be anything special. They're just, you know, squares, and they may have a few benches in them, but they're open spaces. And I think it's really important to have those spaces where anybody can access it, anybody can go, anything can happen there at any time. And it's just the center of the community where everyone goes. And I'm thinking about Pemberton, Whistler, and Squamish right now in the Sea to Sky corridor. And what the places that exist that are like that here are currently kind of the parks in the middle of town. And, you know, a lot of stuff happens in those, and just thinking about those spaces, and are they truly welcoming enough and accessible enough? And also looking at our individual neighborhoods within those communities. And, you know, there's often little parks in each little neighborhood. And how are we using those spaces to make people feel welcoming and feel like they belong? I just wanted to mention there are some groups doing some work in town. There's a group called Our Squamish in town, in Squamish, obviously. And they're building things like bus benches, where they bring in a local artist and they get some money, and they're just putting benches everywhere in town, especially at bus stops. So people have a place to sit and they're also comfortable. They're also doing things like doing pop-up tables and benches in parks and just throwing them in there, and people can just go and sit at them whenever they feel like it. So there are things like that going on. I think that's kind of a cool idea. And I also wanted to echo what Jill said about in order to feel like you belong, you can't be struggling for food and shelter and health. And those basic services for all through food accessibility, health services, and housing availability are essential. They're just the basic bottom line. And everyone has to have an equal opportunity to belong. And that is the basics for that. We also must be able to connect with people who share our interests, as mentioned. But those interests can vary. Like it could be culture, it could be sports, it could be food, it could be arts. But when you look at that, it seems to me like you're creating family, like you're creating a cohort, and you know, that's really important. And you can do that in many different types of groups. Another point is, I really found it interesting in the movie about people saying they wanted to contribute. And I think that's a really important piece that we can't forget. And how are we offering ways to contribute? And you can contribute like at work, at school, in your neighborhood, in volunteering. But what you're doing when you're contributing is you're creating local culture and you're supporting local culture and whatever the focus may be. And so there's a couple of groups, the Squamish Foundation being one of them, that does these neighborhood small grants. And the United Way does these local love grants. And they're little small grants that you don't have to be a nonprofit to apply for. And you just do something in your neighborhood. So there's been block parties, and there's been people have built the little local libraries where you exchange books and whatnot. So things like that around just creating local culture. And the more and more we see of that, I feel like there's going to be a bigger sense of belonging. And the last point I just wanted to mention was, and it's more a question, and I wanted to hopefully talk a little bit more about belonging and the internet and the age of Zoom meetings. And is that helpful? And I've heard there was an interesting discussion amongst some folks with disabilities who were saying these Zoom meetings are changing their lives. Like they're able to access meetings like they've never been able to before. And which is amazing. And so, yes, that's bringing a sense of belonging. But where do we, how important is connecting with people in person and face to face? And how do we, as Tanino spoke the other day about connecting to the land, that has to be done physically in person. And so how do we do that? And how do we monitor what's going on in the internet and make sure that that's useful as well? So that's what I'm going to end up with there. Is that one.
Thank you, Karen. Really appreciate that. I think that might be a good time for Tanina to go next, since you were mentioned.
Karen, I really appreciate what you've all said so far. It's, it's what we actually are doing is we are coming together. We are finding a way of belonging and having that discussion, which is excellent. And you guys have been doing that for, a few sessions now, and that's so beautiful. And I want to just kind of jump off of what you're saying, Karen, about how do we connect through this new way of being, right? And and for me, I'm going to tell you right now, like I'm a resistant person when it comes to technology. I will do it until I have to do it. That's just the way I am. Like I feel, and I'm very dramatic about it. Like it's, I feel like I'm one of those, it's too much. I can't do it. It's too hard. So then I started my business at the beginning of the pandemic. And then also I worked for a school district, and they'd been trying to train us all to start using Google. And I was like, I'm not going to learn how to use it until I absolutely have to. Well, guess what? All of a sudden I had to, right? And I kept hearing this narrative, and I get it. I get that it's really hard to connect. It's that sense that we're not in the same room, right? And everybody is like, it's not the same, and this is too much. And it really, what I figured out was it wasn't that we were meeting in this way, it was that the pandemic was too much. And so I started changing their narrative by saying, we are energy beings and we can connect this way. And this is our opportunity to work that energy being muscle, because we've never had to before. And because eventually we're not going to, I don't know what other people's beliefs are, but I'm an energy being and I'm going to continue on once this body's gone, right? So to me, it's like, oh, I'm just exercising that right now. And so every Thursday night, I join the Zoom call. My friend set it up, him and his wife set it up because she was missing hearing our singing and dancing. You know, they're from Squamish Nation, and she was just missing that piece, right? So they called it drum time or drum and chat time. And so he invited us. He has a criteria of who gets invited. And we use that time. Yes, we sing songs and stuff like that, but also if somebody's really struggling, you know, and they need us to surround them with love, right? It gives us that opportunity to bring that love. And so this is a right now we're participating in community, and we may never see each other in person, but we can send each other love. We can send each other, we can support each other the best way that we know how. And we are doing that. You know, you're here to listen and hear, and we're here to give you what we've kind of experienced in our journey. So that participation is very important. And that's why I sang the, you know, berry picking song. You know, I remember I had a friend, she could barely speak English, and but we could do stuff together, right? She cooked food for me, I cooked food for her. We didn't understand each other, you know, but it was good. Those are good memories. I really liked what the dark guy said about how we need other ways of being in this place. And one of my people said, well, if you're seeing it, then you got to do it. So how can he sees there's a lack of something. So what can we bring to the table, right? We all have skill set. We all have different things. I have a friend who I worked with. She worked in the restaurant industry in Whistler for a very long time. That was her people, right? And then all of a sudden she switched into tourism, and she felt displaced, right? So you can create your own spaces and your own groups of people of knowing and being, but also be very sure about what that looks like and feels like for you, because you want to create a safe environment, but you also and you want to have fun. And what does that look like for you, right? So we can all do that, but it's a matter of how do we do it, and how do we include others into it, you know? So I think, and I want to say this from an Indigenous perspective, learn about the people that you're living where they're, you know, like if you're living in Canada now, you're living in this place, learn about the Indigenous people there, and learn about the history of Canada and where we're at, because Indigenous people have been displaced for a very long time as well. And we're finally finding our place again. You know, I was just reading the story about like in the 1800s or something. And it's, you know, the history of Indigenous people, 500 years of Indigenous, I can't remember, resistance. And there's a part in there where I think they're Mohawk people. I just read it last night, and of course I can't remember all the details, but these Mohawk people are, I think they were Mohawk. I don't want to get it wrong, but the gist of it is the meaning of the story is that they decided, okay, we're going to build our community here where we can live our ways of knowing and being, and nobody else is welcome. And then there became this battle with the government, and they lost the battle, but they made an agreement to move to this other place. And so they built this community. Nobody was allowed in that community if you were not from that community. And they built this beautiful way of knowing and being where they had a great economy. They, you know, they thrived in many ways. They started learning their culture and experiencing all of that again in a safe way. And they decided what that looks like, it feels like, so that they could feel safe. And I was like, huh, I love that, you know, even though they were not on their traditional territory, they were displaced to another place, they made that their own, right? They said, okay, this is how we want it to look. This is how we want our people to accomplish a healthy way of being, so that wellness in all areas of our life can happen. And I was like, I love that. That's perfect. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Tanina, for sharing that. Mickey, last but not least.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this really rich conversation with these really fierce, good thinking women. And I really appreciated Andy's song, welcoming song, and Tanina, your beautiful berry song around remembering the joy, remember the lightness, and then your song on the groundhog, who born on the day of my grandson, who will be 9 on Groundhog's Day, and even that groundhog was looking to belong, and how important those stories, like that story will be weaved in my heart forevermore, and I really appreciate hearing it in that way. But each of you have said something that has really affected me, and in saying, we can belong in many places, not in one place, but in many places. And Jill saying, I don't even sometimes belong here in my own land. I felt that. And Karen's question about technology, does it bring us together or does it not bring us together? Like, what is it actually doing? Is it belonging, or is it only the surface of connection and information sharing? What is the depth there? Thomas More says, but he's an author, and he says, but a community is not a family. It is a group of people held together by feelings of belonging, and those feelings are not a birthright. Belonging is an active verb, something we do positively, which each of you have mentioned today, that active piece of coming together. And, people are hardwired for meaning. We all want to find meaning. That's the reason we're here. Again, going back to Tina, like, I'm here. I should have mentioned that I'm on the seashell. That's not how big my salmon is. I'm here on the Seashell Nation. I was born and raised here, and but I feel so blessed to be on their Swia, and every day my humility is raised when I hear the stories of the land and the people and the sea here, and so I think it's an important piece to make. And I question whether we are actually developing, we do seem to be pretty good, and I'm part of that, creating events and things and situations to belong, but I wonder how we're creating any ritual around it. What is that ritual that we're creating that is that liminality, that space in between where, I may live here, someone else, like in the video, may just be coming here, but what are we creating in between that space to ritualize the belonging? Because belonging changes, and I think that people mention that in their different ways. One day I may feel like I belong here, the next week I really don't feel like I belong here. And even though I'm active in the community, even though I have people that care for me and engage with me, I don't really feel like I belong. So I think we do need to do there's some disorienting that goes on around belonging that we don't really talk about much in my experience. And then what about those people that are disenfranchised, that are hidden? One of the young man spoke about on the video, but maybe it was more than the young man that spoke about, but what about those people that are disenfranchised? How much do they really belong, even if we're providing them resources? Do they feel belonged? Do they feel seen? I don't know. I don't know those answers. I think it's such an individual experience, whether or not you feel belong, whether or not you feel you belong. And again, it changes. And yeah, I don't know. Just by definition of community, it suggests that we are in relationship with one another and that we're sharing resources and interests and goals. But people are still living in isolation, feeling lonely, and struggling with belonging. So, COVID has had a huge impact. People have mentioned that today. And So again, technology, I think it's keeping us connected, but I question whether we feel that we belong in that screen. I question my own belonging here. You know, my good colleague Trudy Deanan, who I must mention, put my name forward, but I've been questioning, do I belong here? Do I belong here? It's a deep question for me. So I don't know, creating a community of belonging does require all of us, and I do think it's our responsibility, generally. Everybody coming together, different cultures, different experiences, different families, all those things. We're coming together, we belong. But I think there's a lot to explore here in terms of what the definition of belonging is for us individually. And I think that is what does start to build a community container, when we can actually speak today and say, I don't feel like I belong. And I like Tanina's, let's get dramatic about it, because sometimes I think that's the only way people hear each other, is if we make it, you know, loud enough. And that's hard on people, but I think sometimes that's what we do in community. So glad to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. I'm glad each of you are a part of it. Would anyone like to add any final comments before we move to the second question? Yeah, Jill, go ahead.
One of the good things about going near the beginning is that you can like hear everybody's comments and then be like, ah, yes. I just wanted to say that yeah, everybody, as everybody was speaking, I realized all the stuff that I forgot to mention, and how, yeah, this is such a wonderful conversation, and all of these women here are so incredibly smart, and I'm learning from all of you. And one thing that I did want to talk about a little bit about is, you know, questioning belonging, and that idea of like, what actually is it, and how do we know? And you know, I've not studied it or really worked very long in it, but one of the things that I feel is that it is relationships and feeling safe. So one of the things that we do try to do with our participants is to become a safety net for them, because oftentimes, you know, they may not come in with stable family lives or really secure relationships with safe people in their lives. And so it really does come down to having connections with people. And then again, that does bring up the question, like if you're on Zoom or, you know, whatever. And for us who are lucky enough to be able-bodied and to be able to go out and especially pre-pandemic, and to work, you know, in community with people and stuff like that, we're used to having all of our senses engaged in that interaction with other people. And so for us, it's felt like you know, a big burden to have most of the senses other than our sight and our ears to be, you know, closed off to the people that we're in relationship with, whereas like Karen was saying, I think it was people who, you know, maybe have a disability, who, you know, they never got to do any of it. Now they're like, this joy, like I get to connect with people using my sight and my ears, like I've never been able to do that before. And then also just a very, very small point, and then I promise I'll shut up, is that, you know, in my mom's culture and the culture that I grew up with, we have a saying, the people in the land are one. There is no distinction there. It's a part of me, or it's not, you know, I'm nature and therefore I understand that I'm part of the land. No, it is the same thing. So everything that happens to the land happens to me. Everything that happens to me, the land feels it as well. And that's why it's so important. I think all of us did talk about space and talk about physical space, talking about green space, community space, that container, but then also the country or the nation of origin and how that's changing our understanding of it. But from my perspective and my Indigenous perspective, and the way I've brought that to the work that we do at Zero Ceiling, is this understanding that, okay, if I'm the land and the land is me, therefore the land is our place of connection. And also, you are also the land. We are the land. And therefore there is not difference. And I think that oftentimes, the systemic stuff gets in the way, and the social stuff gets in the way, and the other stuff does get in the way. But I think understanding that, or whatever it happens to be, and I'm learning a bit about queer theory, and in queer theory there is no normal. So having that shared common understanding of there is no normal, therefore none of us are normal, and we're all equals, or kind of thing. So I feel like the closer we get to understanding that we're all the same, but with really important worldviews and cultures and differences that we need to respect. But it all first comes as seeing one another as people to love, as people worthy of being loved, and then creating that space to do that with, like we're all talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else before we move to the second question? Okay, after you, Marissa.
Thank you, everyone. Our next question is, what is the priority to do? Karen, would you like to start?
I actually don't have a lot of answers for that one at this point. I was hoping to hear more of the discussion and just processing what everyone's said so far. And I mean, a priority absolutely is making sure that we're creating services and supports for people. I mean, and I think I alluded to that in the first question, because we can't move forward at all as a society without people having equal access to services and supports. And so I would say that's absolutely a priority. I really like the idea around ritual. And was it Tanina? Did you talk about ritual? Or Mickey? Sorry, I can't remember who it was, but, and so right now when I think about community events that are created and things that happen, they can be canceled anytime like that. And it could be weather, or it could be the pandemic, or it could be a multitude of things. But real rituals, when I think about my time in Ghana, and there's 3 points of life that were very important and everybody attended, and it was the birth, the naming ceremonies, a marriage ceremony, and a funeral. And those are the 3 big events. And you don't miss those, and they always happen, and they're very important. And so, what rituals are we creating for our communities and for our neighborhoods that happen all the time, every year? And how can we build upon those? And so that's, to me, that is, because I think, we do have spaces. And so, how can we work with those spaces and start to really think about ritual and tradition here? And we absolutely look to our First Nations peoples for guidance in that area, to help the rest of us along with ritual and tradition as well. So yeah, and just saying that, belonging is everyone's responsibility. So how can we all contribute to making sure that we all belong? And what are you doing every day, that make yourself to feel like you belong, or someone else, sometimes making someone else feel like they belong is helping you to feel belonging too. So just remembering that in safe environments, that's been brought up too. And so how are our environments safe? How are we making every environment that we're working in, that we're creating culture in, that we're recreating in, how is that safe for everybody, and how are we making those accessible? So that probably doesn't answer your question at all about priorities, because there's so many, but that's my stab at it.
Thank you, Karen. I know it's kind of hard to find what the priority. There are many things to do.
Yeah.
How to start. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that with us. Jinsey, would you like to go next?
Sure. This question, as I was preparing for this panel, for the other one, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so many things. I don't think that I can even fit it in 3 minutes. And I wrote, looked at my thesis and I was like, okay, Yinzi, you definitely can't read this in 3 minutes, regardless of how fast you speak. So what do you want to pull out? I think the thing it boiled down to for me as the priority is the joy of being seen and of being recognized and witnessed. And that's both, it's a two-way street. So it's both you being able to see other people on the street and be like, oh my gosh, I know your name. You buy the same mangoes as me, or something like that. But it's also like what Jill and Tanina was saying about being able to look out your window and be like, oh, that's a cedar tree. I know it's a cedar tree, and I know that the cedar tree knows me. And there is something very profound in being able to recognize yourself and everything that exists around you. When I first moved to Squamish, the thing that most off put me about feeling like I could belong here is all of these things that everybody seemed to know that I didn't have any way to access, and I didn't even know where to begin because there were so many things. There was the outdoor culture, and then there was where are the grocery stores? I don't know. And so it's making information about a place accessible and in inviting those who aren't yet known to be known. And I found that volunteering is a really powerful way of doing that. Since I graduated from Quest, I have been volunteering at Under One Roof, which is the Squamish's resource for houseless slash those who are struggling with substance abuse and those who need a place to do laundry or need a place to get food. I've been volunteering there every week for this past year, and it's been really powerful, both as a ritual that I've built for myself as a way to give back to my community, but also as a way to be like, wow, this is something that gives me worth in this community, because it matters whether or not I show up on Wednesdays to serve lunch or not. But I don't know if that's actually a priority that can be instilled in every company, but I do think that it would be really cool if every shop and company and business in town was like, every year or every month we will offer an opportunity for someone who's never experienced this before to come experience this, and it will open so many more doors and reduce barriers of I don't know how to climb, and then Ground Up is like, well, we have shoes and we have many people who know how to climb. You just so happen to be the one person this month that we can help learn. And I think that the joy of being seen is a lot of what fosters a sense of belonging.
Minky, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reflecting what Karen said. I feel I'm not sure all the time. I think that ritual is, I definitely believe in ritual, and I think we could do that in a much deeper way. I think there's a way to welcome people, to include people, to resource people through ritual. But I lean a little bit more on asking the harder questions of ourselves, as with those of us who have sort of capacity and feel like we belong in the moment, to ask ourselves really hard questions about belonging. Did the person I stood in line up yesterday feel like they belonged? As Tanina says, was my energy one of belonging and welcoming, or was my energy of something else? I think we have to ask ourselves some pretty hard questions. I don't know for certain that everyone feels that they belong here where I am. And I don't even feel sometimes in our own campus that everybody feels like they belong. I think people struggle sometimes to feel they belong, and it has a large impact on people, how they feel, how they do their work, how we mine their talent, or they mine their talent, all of those kinds of things. So I'm not certain about that there's an answer. In fact, as I hear my thoughts aloud, I think more of this kind of conversation is a start. And maybe this is part of the ritual, coming together in this, creating structure, creates a strong community. So creating some structure around coming together, having these kinds of dialogue, bringing in people who do not feel that they belong and hearing from them, and holding that, and finding our responsibility, or that our response is available to us, so that we can see it, know it, and be accountable for it.
Okay. Tanina, would you like to share your thoughts with us?
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing those things. You know, as I was sitting here, I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's great. And then I'm like, oh, what do I want to share? You know, like it's just like, there's so, but I really like this. When I years ago I think I was in my early 30s. It kind of gives you an idea that I'm older. I moved to Squamish to go to college, and so I was fortunate I could live with my first cousin, and so it didn't feel like, you know, I was completely alone. But at the same time, her and I are two very different people, right? And before I moved there, I had went to buy a bike at, like, when I was living here in Mount Currie. I went to buy a bike in Squamish, and I went to the local bike shop, you know, Corsica Cycles, and you know, as timidly like going, you know, like, these are cool people, man. So I felt like really overwhelmed and uncomfortable, like here's this little weird girl coming in trying to buy a bike, and I know nothing about mechanical things. I know that they have two wheels, they need brakes, and things like that. Like, I just wanted a bike, and the biking world has so much to it, right? And they're like, oh, well, what kind of bike do you want? I just want a bike. So I ended up getting a hardtail. I really didn't know what that meant at the time, but it sounded cool. And then when I finally moved there a couple of years after that to go to college, the owner of the bike, he was like, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, awesome. Do you love your bike? I'm like, yeah. And I just moved here. You know, all of a sudden, him and I had a connection, right? And so when you live in this kind of climate, you just kind of, you live it, right? Like, if I didn't do anything because of the poor weather, I would never do anything. So I rode my bike year round, right? I love biking. And then when I moved to Squamish, I did the same. And I didn't know that people in Squamish actually did put their bikes away during the winter. Here I was going for mountain bike rides in my bike, so I became friends with these guys because I know nothing about bikes, and then they gave me and then I started volunteering for, you know, Tom, and for all those mountain biking, you know, races and stuff like that, and you know, Test of Metal, and I can't remember what the other one was called. There was a few of them, and so I'd volunteer for those, and because I didn't have a car, I'd have to ride to the races in order to volunteer at the races. And they're not very good, but all of a sudden I got this nickname because I rode year round, and my nickname became Hardcore. Hardcore. And then just a little side note, you know, I was just in my early 30s, and I was still a little bit of a party person. But I also, and then they find out that, because they all, mountain bikers, they all are bikers, they all seem to drink beer and they eat like sausages, or smokies or whatever. And I don't drink beer, I drink whiskey, you know? And then, so that's why I got my nickname, is because I ride my bike all year and I drink whiskey, right? Not that I drink a lot, but like it just was like, yeah, you're hardcore. So I became part of this community because of somebody who was welcoming me, right? And all of a sudden I had a world that I loved very much and became a part of, and this community. And it was just really cool to be part of something that was my own. As much as I love my home and everything, I actually didn't feel as connected back then. I didn't feel as connected to my people as I did to this community that I'd entered into, this biking world. It's taken me a long time to really, because of the pain of Indigenous people in this country, that displacement became deeply ingrained in us. Even though we were still on the land, we had become so disconnected. And so in that strange kind of way, it helped, being part of that mountain biking crowd created this beautiful community that I was fully, wholeheartedly involved in. And they're my family. I still see people from there, and we just chit chat and I ask about kids, and they ask about my life and my husband and things like that. And I made it a priority to build relationships with people that in the biking world, like honestly, riding like 6 hours to go and volunteer at a location is a lot of work, right? But it was a priority and I stuck to it. And I'm really glad I did it, because what it did was because of the trauma that I was living in from the effects of, residential school and my family, and then also institutionalized, institutionalized communities, and then also colonization, I learned what a healthy community could look like. And that has helped me be where I am and who I am today. It helped me develop the sense of belonging with my own people that I really didn't feel like I had. And now I have it. And my dad does this test with me, which is really interesting, because I want you to understand, in my youth, I was a really outdoors person. I hiked, I canoed, I mountain bike ride. You get me outside, that was me, right? But it's different now. It's a little bit different now than back then, because now, so when my dad and I go for a drive to Squamish or to Lillooet, my dad does this thing. He says, "Do you feel it? Do you feel that we've left our territory?" "Yes, Dad, I do. I feel it." And then when we come back, he's like, "Do you feel it? We're on our land." It's so cute. And he just does it every time. He wants to make sure he knows that I'm good inside, right? That's what he's not really testing me. He's making sure that I'm in my center. And I want to share this story that was really meaningful to me. I hope I'm not taking up too much time here. I read this article in Mountain Life that really spoke to me. And it was these three snowboarders. They were snowboarding in northern BC in the winter, and every summer they would work so that they could supplement their lifestyle, right? And but they decided that the people were protesting, the Indigenous people in that area were protesting, I think, a pipeline or something. And so they decided, we love this place. We do not want it to change either, right? And so they decided to protest with the people there, And the night before the RCMP were to go in and disband them, one of the young men was saying, I don't know if I should be here with you. Like, I don't belong here. And the elder said to him, you have been living off this land. You've been eating the food from this land, drinking the water. You are of this land now. This is your place. And so the next morning they got up and they protested with the people. And that's the way we are meant to be as Indigenous people. You know, if this is where your heart is, this is where you want to be, this is where you want to dig your roots in, you are this place. And I always say, you know, you are now, if you live in Whistler or you live in Pemberton, you are a Lil'wat. If you live in Squamish, you are Squamish. If you live in Sechelt, you're, I don't know what the term is for Sechelt, but you know, that's your place. That's where you're meant to be. And we don't know how small the world was before colonization started. We don't know how connected we really are all, right? So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanina, for sharing all that. Jill, would you like to answer?
I'll try my best, but I think, like everybody else shared, that it's hard to pick just, you know, a couple priorities. But I do have 4 that I've prepared, so bear with me. And I picked 4 because, well, it's a sacred number, of course, but also because we all have different power within our communities, within our relationships, and we all have different capacity right now. We all have different energy levels, different mental health, different things we're dealing with. So maybe you know, if any of these resonate with you, it'd be really cool. And then we all have different abilities to influence, you know, other people and ourselves. So for yourself, I would really hope that you learn that you are worthy of love, so that you can demand or share that energy, and understand that you do belong. You belong here, you belong wherever you are, you belong where you choose to be, and that you are loved. For relationships with other people, I would say that the priority is to develop that empathy muscle, to learn that, okay, if I'm worthy of love, then so is everybody else, and to listen. And somebody said in the video, walk a mile in my shoes. Sorry, I was muted. Did I say something wrong?
No.
Okay, censorship. No, I'm joking. Sorry, that was a very bad humor.
No, sorry about that.
No worries.
I don't know
at what point I was. That's okay. But yeah, and then to develop that empathy muscle, and to really start to engage in relationships. In the community sense, I really hope that yeah, people start to volunteer and start to find and create that space for others. If you do have the power or the knowledge or the inclination, please do try to start to fight for better services, better resources, and to eliminate the barriers that are keeping people out of community and who are making it difficult for people to thrive. And then also just universally, if you can connect to the land a little bit more and to understand what that means to you, whether that's learning from Indigenous teachers, whether that's I've trying to take up snowboarding, and I am connecting with the land on my ass and my elbow these days, but maybe for you it's going out and learning about foraging and finding new places and finding the wonder that is there, and learning maybe some traditional names, or singing songs. I think, you know, pick whichever one. I think I said 5 actually, but pick whichever one resonates the most with you. Maybe 5 is a sacred number too. But and thank you.
Well, thank you so much, all of you. It was beautiful to hear. I think, Jeffrey, there's some comments there. I think we could hear you all, you know, all night. It was really grateful. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it's just we have some minutes. I'm not sure if people from our audience wants to ask. They want to speak, ask any question, or share any experience or thoughts, comments. No, people are completely impressed with all the things that they need to absorb. We need to absorb all the information and the amazing thing that you shared today. It was wonderful, definitely. I'm not sure.
There is one question from the chat, actually. Lisa, as community service providers, including librarians like her, what can we do to foster belonging? And as a community service provider, maybe Karen or Jill would like to respond to that question.
Jill, do you want to go first?
Well, I feel like I would probably just go back to the things that I just said. Unfortunately, I haven't had any new epiphanies in the last second. So just, I guess connecting and learning about people and creating those genuine relationships one-to-one and having that empathy to, even if you disagree or don't understand somebody, to see them as a person and hopefully help them to feel safe enough that they feel like this is a space for them.
And I would add on top of that, there is lots of great diversity, equity, and inclusion training out there right now. And I would encourage any workplace to take advantage of those trainings. And also pressure your board or your management team to write diversity, equity, and inclusion into your policies. Hi. And into your into every piece of your workplace. So making sure that that diversity, equity, inclusion is in there in order to promote belonging. And the one thing I just wanted to add, I agree with the person who said they could listen to Tanina's stories all night long. I could too. And I really like this discussion about connection to the land. And we can have human connections and those, play a huge part, but we have to have that connection to the land. And how do those things come together? And also, how do we really promote that connection to the land in urban settings? That could be a lot more challenging for people. So I would just like us to think about that and how can we support people to have that connection to the land in circumstances that maybe aren't that easy. And also thumbs up to Mickey, who mentioned bringing people on who may be struggling with belonging onto a panel and having that as part of the discussion. Thank you.
Something I just want to say specifically for libraries is that libraries contain such a wealth of knowledge. And when I first moved to Squamish, I didn't know that library cards were free. And it really blew my mind that they are free and that you can then check out and borrow so many books. And I've recently started working for the little bookshop here in Squamish, which is a mobile cart dedicated to, as my boss puts it, big ideas for little humans. And recently, for the very first time in my life, I have read picture books filled with little kids who look like I looked when I was little, and it genuinely brought tears to my eyes. So I think that as a library, stocking books that contain different characters that are written by authors of all stripes is very important and needed.
Thanks, Yancy. I'm very mindful of the time, but perhaps we'll give the panel an opportunity to say some parting words, maybe in 15 seconds or less. What would you like everyone to take away from this conversation? Nikki, would you like to go next?
Oh, I was so caught up in the visual image of being in a library and how the stacks, we all belong in one of those stacks of library books, and how a library can be a very sacred place for people where they can go and find themselves. So I was really just caught up in that visual image that Ian was providing me. Yeah, I don't know. I just think when I think about that, when I feel I don't belong, maybe I need to look around and see who else doesn't feel like they belong. I'm sure they're there. And again, I just really thank you for this really profound conversation. I look forward to more conversation around this. And yeah, it's really got me in deep thought. The feeling of belonging. It's important. We need to, we want and need, it's intrinsic within us to want to feel like we belong. So yeah, I'm gonna move myself out of the picture more when I don't feel like I belong, and find someone who maybe have a sense of that, or sit beside them and hear what they have to say. Thank you for this.
Thanks, Nikki. Karen, 15 seconds or less. What would you like everyone to take away?
I'm thankful for this conversation. I think we can only move forward with conversations like this. And I love the idea about community gardens. Absolutely, community gardens help in an urban setting with belonging. So thank you, everyone, for this wonderful experience and for the knowledge shared.
Thanks, Karen. Yinzi.
Tell the people around you that you see them, and ask for that in response. And if you don't feel seen, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you see yourself.
Thanks. Jill.
Thank you very much, everybody. So amazing to be here. And I would hopefully just leave you with curiosity. Hopefully everybody just has developed just a sense of curiosity about themselves, about others, about the community, asking these big questions. It's really hard, but I feel like we had a great group here today to really start this discussion. And I invite anybody, you look, Google Zero Ceiling, and I'm on our team page if anybody wants to further this discussion, because this is something that we think about all the time, and so happy that I was able to come here and to chat with this wonderful panel. So thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Antonina.
You know, everybody said so many lovely things, and I think one of the things for sure is, you know, talking about urban settings, for sure connection is really important to people and to place. And I have two friends that live in the city, and one of my friends, he started a bird watching tour company, and he would bring tours in the city to watch birds. And I was just like, what? You know, what a cool thing. And then I have another friend who is, you know, really loves to utilize plants in a medicinal way. And so she does that too. She brings tours in urban settings, and you find medicinal plants. And, you know, there are ways to connect in urban settings to land in place, and also learn about the Indigenous people in those cities, you know, like Skohopmish and Tsleil-Waututh, and all of a sudden I figure out, can't remember who else, but they are in those cities. You know, the people of that place are still there. So find out who they are and their language, and be that you know, make those connections. Kukshimkal.
Thanks, Tanina. So that brings us to the end of today's events. I just want to again thank all the panel members for participating, and also the audience for coming here to participate in these really important discussions. This is the last Building Inclusive Communities event, but not the end of the conversation. We encourage everyone to keep these conversations alive and continue them with your families, your friends, in your workplaces and in your communities, so we can keep building these inclusive communities together. I just also want to thank the team behind this project. We'll be looking at how we can support communities in the region to continue these conversations, so please stay in touch. And from
Thank you
Marissa
so
and I,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.